Hey guys, this is May Elizabeth, and in this video I would like to discuss the simulation in which we live, but I would like to incorporate the term assimilation, as it appears to me that we are in both a simulation but also in assimilation, and that the controllers are aware of this verbiage, because we must always keep in mind that the terminology that we use um, through our voice and speaking, and also through text, as everything is recorded now digitally, we are engaging with the system. We are engaging with AI, which AI has always been here, and it's the foundation of our construct, this reality, as it appears to me that we are on another level of reality that is not base level, or not, clearly it's not an analog type loving reality, and we are in some type of an overlay, and it's clearly a symbiotic, synergistic relationship with the controllers while we assimilate. So what do I mean by assimilate in the simulation? What I mean is that all the gadgets, the technology, the digital world, think internet, enter the net, right? The World Wide Web, in which we engage in on a regular daily basis. We are assimilating into this next, into the more AI type culture, the android hybridized human 2.0, which is the direction that this was intended to go. And anyone who is over, I would say, about 40 or 45, if you lived in a time of a more analog world, then like the 90s, for example, was a time when I was growing up in the late 80s and 90s, and maybe some are growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And at any rate, this was a much more analog, this was a much more, for lack of a better word, real, although it wasn't real. There was still and definitely the process had began long ago. This process of the AI takeover, which AI has always been here, but didn't make itself known or expose itself as much as it has now, because it needs to now, because it's generated a level of acceptance over time, which the controllers appear to have a lot of patience. And whether you believe the controllers are consciousness, um, you know, um, could we be ultimately creating this whole thing? That's very possible, but there is some sort of outer layer of a dark force. Appears to be a lot of dead consciousness in this reality. And what they need the brethren of life. They need the spiritual beings in the system to assimilate to the digital, more synthetic, artificial overlay of this reality more and more, so that it creates ultimately a type of eternal consciousness, which is, in my opinion, quite terrifying. And if you read about the definition of assimilation, to assimilate is essentially, it is to overtake a society, culture, introduce ideas, alter thoughts, ideas, brainwaves, behavioral patterns. Even you could actually even include nutrition there. So it's creating the hybridized version of some of us that are a more naturally analog version, a more spiritual. We have a spark or a frequency that appears to be different, and we are not as downloadable as the up and coming generations that are induced with the vaccines and with you know, they have their whole life only known technology, and those of us that have lived for a time without it, we know how vastly different it is. And there is clearly a silent war going on, as I do believe that the digital gadgets are a type of weaponry which is used to engage and create the synergistic relationship so that we morph essentially into this version. And I'm certain that they need us, which I don't think there's that many of us. I actually believe that there's very few of us that are a real spiritual, on a real spiritual frequency. We are all a sort of electric being, but those of us that we operate on a different frequency, you know, from what I can tell, they need this and this simulation, but they need us to assimilate as well. This is their goal. And what is the ultimate? What is the ultimate project or project? As for me, when I see them title things with project, I know it really means project, as we are projected into this artificial assimilation conducted by AI, and always has been, as it was constructed by AI. But it's going through a wheel of patterns, since there is no such thing as real time. You know, it's not linear, and this not in the way we are told or how we have been indoctrinated to believe. So assimilation, you know, this is going to be a lot easier for those up and coming generations who have been indoctrinated in a different level than we have, than those of us who are not downloadable. And assimilation, just like a simulation, okay, it needs our interaction and our input. If we were in a type of overlay quantum computer based system that is really unimaginable, if we think about this type of quantum matrix computer that generates this reality, it's unfathomable to our human mind. We are limited and restricted. We are restricted and limited with language and thought. However, there are those of us that can see this quite clearly. This digital box in which we reside, we want out. You know, we want out. We don't want to assimilate. And the up and coming generations are much more apt to assimilate in the simulation. And with language, one of my skills, one of my I would say, from a different outer source, is I don't believe the brain is the actual generator of thoughts. It comes from a source outside of us, and it's just more of an antenna, and it's transmitted like a receiver, right? Like a radio station. And I get these words, and it's a type of inverted, upside down, sometimes backwards language. And I get these pretty regularly, and I am certain that the simulation is connected to the assimilation, and that the controllers are aware of this. So they need our energy our louche, for another, that's becoming a very common term these days in the truther world, but they do need it, and to assimilate. So our job, those of us that are revolutionary, that are revolutionary, I should say, we need to not comply. Do you know what I've been doing lately that I would recommend to anyone listening? And likely a lot of truthers are already doing this, but I'm doing it more and more. Just on the smallest scale here, rather than when you're on the internet and they say accept or decline cookies, or do you accept terms, and we just, years ago you would just check it, right? I don't check them anymore, and I always say deny. There's some sort of data collection. I do believe there's some sort of soul contract on a level that is unseeable. The free will is a very murky term, and I'm not so certain that we have the free will like we'd like to believe, because we are constantly tricked in this assimilation. So we are constantly tricked, and you must deny and not comply. A lot of things are happening swiftly lately. Swiftly, no pun intended. And, perhaps some of my exposure to the other side, flying the controllers of the realm, which I have done for 2 decades in my line of work. I don't know, maybe this exposure has somehow enlightened me to a level, and it affects the visions that I get, and the codes and the language, and I want to give them to you. Which, thank goodness, I guess that I'm so heavily shadow banned, because I can remain incognito safely to some degree. But what I want to say in this video is we are assimilating, and if you haven't done it already, it's time to disconnect as much as we can. So personally, I have been doing a lot more analog based activities, handwriting, a lot of handwriting in a notebook, which I would recommend to anyone, not just journaling, but just handwriting everything you can, everything you get your hands on. Because remember that in this assimilation, as they continue their efforts to create a fully synthetic world, okay, just remember, the more and more that you engage digitally, and the less and less you engage in real life activities, real human activities, the more that the more power that they have, and essentially your digital clone, your synthetic self, is created. So we need to see this technology that is under the guise of communication and for our betterment, which we know that it's not. We know that it's not. Has it made your life any better? All these digital gadgets and you don't connect more. Another idea is I'm getting rid of all Facebook memories, and the whole thing in general. You need to keep yourself off as much as you can of the assimilation. The assimilation is in progress. It's been in progress for quite some time. And I noticed that in the truther community, the terminology of assimilation is quite common. I try to use holographic more often than assimilation, as I feel like it's already reached the highest levels of the so-called scientists, which we know are funded by the dark forces, and whether they realize it or not, which they probably don't, many of them, as they're just downloaded the information. But what I'm getting at here is they're saying, oh yes, we're in a simulation. Well, you better watch out, because why are we using these words now? Why is it so widely accepted? It's much more than that. No, this is a simulation. This layer in which we reside is a simulation. It is desperate for our spiritual energy and our input in order to create this huge quantum field that is essentially invisible to us. And you see, we have this invisible energy which extends many feet. You could call it an aura, a body area network. And the CIA had listed this as a part of the body. And in my series of matrix books, which were very expensive and hard to find, it is listed as part of the body, the energy field. It's invisible, and it's a way that they connect to us through the ether. Just like they connect to, there's the ether, and then there's the the internet, the ethernet. So, and then there's the invisible layer, which is connected to the morphogenic field. And this is what is this inducement, this pressurized system is creating this gender fluidity, and along with the Maxines, and creating the hybridized human 2.0. But they also need the real spiritual being. They also need some real spirits to uphold the system. Just like they would say, backdrop characters, the Ottomans. I usually call them the Ottomans. Those convince us of this in this virtual reality in which we live. Those convince us that we're in a real world, which we are not. So we are continuously tricked, and we need to be aware of this assimilation because it's kind of invisible, and we must use the digital system, this synergistic relationship. We must use it to function in this layer of consciousness in which we reside, right? But everything begins with thought form. There's thought form, there's music, there's speaking, there's language. So we limit ourselves, as much as we limit ourselves and we step away from the digital systems and the phone, and even use landline phones. You do the handwriting, use a real camera. I have just recently purchased an analog camera, a digital camera, a camera that is, 35 millimeter film, and from the 1970s. And I want to do more and more analog based activities, and also as a painter and an artist. This is another thing you can do, crafts, any type of things you can do with your hands in which you are away from the screen. So the screen is much more than just us watching. It's an interlocking synergistic relationship as they upload data and they create a more synthetic version of reality with our uploaded information. So this is why it's very important that we limit and restrict this, and we say no, we decline, we do not accept, right? So this is what I have on this subject for now, on assimilation, and I would love to know your thoughts on this as well. In other words, have you noticed lately the Ottomans, and have you noticed the reality going full swing, AI, people really connecting, chat GPT, etc. Oh, they love it so much. I think it's terrifying. I refuse to engage in any of that. And even truthers will say, "Oh, I was with chat. I was hacked. I got hacked into. It told me all these secrets of." No, it didn't. And all they're doing is promoting more and more engagement while they digitally upload us into the synthetic version. It's a simulation. We are in a simulation. So in this holographic field of consciousness. And I will conclude there and love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the simulation in which we live. Thanks for listening. Until next time.